Hi, welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. As always, I'm your host, Elvis. Today I've got a great guest, Nicole Starbuck. I can already tell it's going to be a really good conversation, so stick around. But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Terra Vitality. Whether you're looking to get healthier, fitter, and more free, or just looking for some nice clothes, organic, that's made by or designed by actual artists, all of them were actually guests on my podcast. Feel free to check it out. Link in the description. And also, if you want to do something good, help someone out, please support Project Child Safe. I work together with them. They go rescuing children from the horrors of human trafficking. So every donation, even if it's $5 or less, it helps a lot. Thank you very much. So now, today's guest is Nicole, as I said, and so please introduce yourself a bit.
Thank you so much, Elvis, and I appreciate you having me here to have a conversation and share my story.
Anytime.
Yeah, so my name is Nicole Starbuck. I'm a psychic empath, quantum energy healer, spiritual mentor, and life coach. And I'm just super passionate about showing people how to tune into their intuition and use and develop their spiritual gifts and abilities to create their dream life.
Good. So, what's your story? How did you get to what you're doing?
Oh man, it goes deep. We got to go back like 20 something years. So
Let's
I
go. Let's
first
do it.
I first discovered my spiritual gift and ability. Some call it the gift of prophecy. I call it psychic intuition when I was 9 years old. So I was coming out of school to go get picked up, and just out of nowhere, I had this random thought that a bird was going to poop on me. And sure enough, it did. It pooped right here on my arm. And I remember it so vividly. I looked down and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so gross. This is so gross. But also, like, I predicted this. This is kind of cool and also scary. And then so I went to go wash it off and then went and got picked up. And ever since then, I would start getting these predictive dreams. I would have a vision and they would come true. I would have premonitions and predictions and they would come true and they would happen. And I started to get kind of overwhelmed and scared because, imagine being 9 years old, having these visions and they come true. And oftentimes there are things that are not so great. And so, one, I felt out of control. And two, I felt like there wasn't anything I could do about the outcomes that I was seeing. There wasn't anything I could do to change or transform it. And I did not necessarily have the environment to develop this in a safe way. I grew up in a fairly conservative Christian home, and I was told that things like meditation was weird and like yoga was weird, that if I did pendulum or tarot, that was evil, that was witchcraft, I was going to go to hell. And so I just kept it to myself for a long, long time. And so I ended up having a lot of anxiety because I would have these visions and I would just ruminate and circle them in my head and not do anything about it. And then because I wasn't living in alignment with my authentic truth, I didn't have the opportunity to pursue my mission and purpose at that time. I ended up having a lot of depression. And all of this disease or dis-ease, as I call it, built up in my system led to chronic illness, which eventually led to burnout. And so I had what I call my first spiritual awakening in the ER. I woke up, they told me that I had had a panic attack and they were really pushing for psychiatric medication. And I just felt like there had to be another way. I know that people do that and it has its place in certain instances, but I just felt in my soul that there had to be another way to doing life. I had done the quote unquote American dream, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, everything will be fine. Everything was not fine. And I didn't want to keep living that way. So then I started a personal growth and development journey, listening to podcasts, reading books, going to seminars, taking courses and classes. I even got a life coaching certification. And that helped me very well to get into alignment with my mind and my body. But I still felt like I was missing something. I was missing a spiritual component. And so then I had what I call my second spiritual awakening. I felt called to go to a particular retreat. And it's funny because I didn't even have the money to go to this retreat, but I just felt like something was calling me there. So I go to this retreat and one of the facilitators just looks at me and she goes, "You're psychic." And I'm like freaking out because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, how did you know? You're not supposed to know this. This is my dark secret. Like, no one's supposed to know this. And so she helped me to unravel and unwrap the layers of resistance that I had built towards this because of the years of conditioning that I had received and thinking this was something wrong, something bad, something evil, something that was going to hurt people. And then that really opened up my eyes towards psychic development. I went all in this spiritual growth and development journey in developing my psychic skills. I started doing professional psychic readings, really honed in my craft and practicing and getting certified in some different modalities. And so now what I do is I show other people how to develop their psychic skills and abilities so that they can not only do readings for themselves and others, but actually use those powers to heal themselves and others and make impactful change in the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
So fascinating. I've been, like I said to you just a few minutes ago, I've been fascinated by this stuff. Now, the thing is, and put it this way, what would you say to people, whether it's scientists or just regular people, who say that none of these things exist? You know, whether it's like predicting future or any of these other psychic abilities.
Yeah, I get a lot of that, like left brain logical thinking and the scientists, like, how do you know? And from what I've seen, what I've read and studied and understand is that we know more about quantum physics than we do about the other branches of science. And ultimately, this is just an exploration. The whole field of science is an exploration into what we actually don't know and understand. And so, couldn't it be possible that it could exist? That's the question. So, how do you know for certain that it doesn't? Would be my question back. So, could it be possible that it is? Yes. And is it possible that there are other things that we don't understand? Yes.
Yeah, there's definitely out there a lot of things out there that we just don't know about. And now, these kinds of phenomena, I would say, they are just on the edge of what science can really detect in some cases, because
Yeah.
they can be very elusive in many times.
Mm-hmm.
Although that being said, there is some good research out there that shows that actually these things do exist. That there's at least some kind of connection, or at least a way where our consciousness can affect things outside of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, with in regards to science and study, a lot of that comes from that left brain side of things that wants to understand the details and perhaps to a
Hmm.
degree wants to control. And the thing with intuition and the thing with a lot of these metaphysical phenomenons is that it's not about knowing the details. It's not about having all of the answers or having a sense of control. It really is about the trusting in just understanding that there are things at play that are bigger than us, outside of us, that are conspiring in our favor. And we just have to like lean back and let go and not necessarily have to understand everything. Something doesn't have to make logical sense for it to be true. That's the lesson I'm learning more and more as I dive into this more and more. I've been doing this for years now, but even now it's like something doesn't have to make sense for it to be true.
Hmm. Yeah,
And just making
definitely.
my peace with that.
Yeah, and these kinds of phenomena, they definitely invite us to think outside of the box, and also not to just rely on the, like you were saying, the left side of our brains, which is just about the logical and having proof and all that stuff. I mean, it seems like all these phenomena, and this takes into account not just psychic abilities, they seem to show they are just elusive enough for us to not be able to definitely prove them with science, with the way we think right now. But there's still enough evidence for us to look at it and there's something there. So
Yeah.
it kind of like, even like John Mack was talking about this stuff, where it really invites us to expand our horizon and think differently, which is actually what we need right now
Yeah.
in the world.
Exactly.
Now, you were saying that your story, I've heard it quite a few times from a few people. Some of them are my friends now, where they had some kind of psychic ability, and obviously society tells you it's non-existent. If you're a Christian, then it can be even worse in that case, and they suppress this side of themselves, and that causes mental problems, even in some cases like attempts of suicide and stuff like that. So how did you overcome that?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a journey, and I remember being in such intense pain because I didn't realize that at the time I was a highly sensitive person and also empathic, which means that I felt everything. I couldn't even go to the grocery store because I would pick up on the other people's energy just in the aisle, and I would embody it and not know how to filter out the energy. And I remember, not that I ever had an attempt, but I just remember wanting to, sorry about the noise. I remember wanting the pain to end. And I just thought, there has to be a reason. There has to be a reason. And I had in that moment a thought that I'm destined for greatness. So I remember thinking that it was like this voice that came in almost outside of myself, and somebody had asked me, like, if you could go back and talk to that version of you that it was in that moment. I was reflecting on this, and I felt like that was my higher self coming back, almost like time travel. It's like my higher self coming back in that moment and saying, it's going to be okay. You're destined for greatness. Everything's happening for a reason. And that's really what got me out of bed in the morning, is that there were days when I would wake up and I felt like I had gotten hit by a truck. Everything hurt. Like, I just didn't want to get out of bed. And I thought, well, if one person could benefit from me getting out of bed and me pushing through this and me sharing my story, then it would have all been worth it to save someone else from going through what I'm going through. And that's what kept me going. And it was just finding those small wins of, like, there was in this time in my life where if I had gotten out of bed and taken a shower and brushed my teeth, like, I had won. I had done it. And so that got me to what I call stability. So we have in life these like 4 tiers, right? So we have survival mode, which a lot of people operate in. We have stability, which I was striving for. Then we have success. And I want to be clear that success is whatever you decide it to be. It is not anyone else's idea of what you should be doing. And then we have significance, which is not your material comforts and you being stable and you having, money and a nice place to live, but you actually taking some sort of message, some sort of mission, some sort of purpose, and sharing it with the world.
Sorry, sometimes happens, stuff like this.
You're processing energy when it comes through. I had a session yesterday where he was asking some really poignant question, and out of nowhere, like, my voice completely stopped. Like, I started coughing, hacking coughing, and like my voice completely stopped and I couldn't even talk. This is a processing
Crazy.
energy. I know.
Yeah, I guess. But sometimes also I forget what I want to say or something like that. So when it comes to your psychic abilities, once you get yourself in a better place, how did you develop them? How do you approach something like that?
Yeah. So I just started with guided meditation just to practice my skills with visualization, which also helped with manifestation, because I had, right before that second spiritual awakening of like reactivating my psychic abilities, I had started learning about the law of attraction. I had come across a book called The Secret. Most people are familiar with The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And then around that same time, I also discovered the movie version of it. And so what I learned is that energy is all around us and it's through us, and like attracts like. So positive thoughts attract positive energy, negative thoughts attract negative energy. So I was already playing around with this. And then I had my psychic reawakening, and I just wanted to practice as much as possible. And now, having done this, I realized I didn't actually need the tools, but I started out practicing with a pendulum and tarot cards, which were the 2 things I was told growing up that were evil and I was going to hell. So this was interesting for me to now bring these back into my life. But I just picked up a couple of books on how to use these, and I just started practicing. So what I would do is I would intuit a particular outcome and like feel into what I thought may be true about a situation, and then I would test it. And so anyone that has never used a pendulum before, how it works is that it picks up on the energy that you already like know within your system. It's not that you are making the pendulum move, it's that you are just holding it in place, and it picks up on the micro vibrations happening in your body, which come through your arm. And then that is what causes the pendulum to swing one way or another. And everyone's energy is different. So my yes and no, my yes is like an up and down, and the no is a side to side, just like it was if you would shake your head or nod your head. And so I started playing around with that, and I found that after a while, I didn't actually need the pendulum, that I already knew the answer, and the pendulum was just confirming it. Same with the cards. I learned how to read tarot cards, but then I learned that I didn't actually need the cards. I already knew the answers. The cards were just an extension of what I already knew to be true. And the thing that really helped me to build my confidence was just getting out there. Like as soon as I had that awakening, started offering professional readings, and got a lot of practice that way. I actually looked back. It's been, I think, 3 or 4 years since that happened. I looked back and I've helped over 1,000 people find clarity and confidence through psychic readings online. And so once I got really confident doing that, I started getting more into healing modalities. So practicing quantum energy healing, practicing Reiki and light language. I started doing Akashic records and hypnosis. And then incorporating that in my practice, in my coaching practice. It wasn't just life coaching. It wasn't just self-care coaching. It wasn't just mindset coaching. It was everything. It was a holistic approach to life that included the spiritual components. And often when somebody would come to me and say, I want to grow my business, we would find there was some other thing that was holding them back from growing their business. So there was a lot of opportunities there for us to use energy healing to shift those slow moving energies so then they could grow their business effectively.
I could ask you about everything that you just mentioned. We'll probably be here for hours. But
I'm an open book. You can ask me anything.
no worries. Maybe when you mention meditation, because over the years I've researched almost everything that's out there, right? Ranging from UFOs to all these psychic abilities and all that stuff, healing. And one thing that, because I like to simplify things and look at what's in common and, cut through the crap, let's just say. Right. And one thing that I've noticed that all of these things, whether it's remote viewing, healing, all the rest of it, even the booking of dreams, when it comes down to it, it's changing changing your brain waves, calming them down. Because usually, right now, as we are talking, we're in a state of beta waves.
Yeah.
But once you get to alpha and theta,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you can unlock some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's why so many people respond to meditation. And I'll be completely honest that I am not a person that will just sit in a dark room and like sit there quietly for 30 minutes. I practice something called, I either do a guided meditation, which is an audio where someone is speaking and guiding, or something called active meditation, where I'm engaged in some other routine activity like doing the dishes, folding laundry, going for a walk, vacuuming, anything like that, where it's just like super repetitive, that my active brain can kind of just take a back
Mhm.
seat, and then it allows the imagination to flow. And this is often where I get a lot of my inspired ideas. I get aligned action steps for next phases of things that I'm working on. I get creative ideas for courses and programs. I get my angels and ancestors talking to me. So it's just really about recognizing and bringing our awareness to, you can drop into that state at any time. You don't necessarily have to like go sit in a quiet room and chant for 30 minutes in order for this to happen.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Meditation is not what we usually think of. Meditation is sitting down and observing your breath or something like that. It's an external technique, but so more important, it's the state of mind, and you can achieve that through very different means. I mean, some people have some really crazy experiences by running an ultra marathon. Right? It's even when I was doing a longer distance runs, like my longest was like 18, 20 miles. At some point, it's very repetitive, and you get into a state where it changes your state of consciousness to some extent. So
Mm-hmm.
there's very many different ways how to achieve the same thing.
Yeah.
And for me, also, like if I get into a slightly different state, instead of observing my breath for 30 minutes or something like that, I like to do the Wim Hof method, for example, because I found that it's very quick and it's very effective. And there's evidence to show that it does change your brain waves down to alpha or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
I
different
found
ways.
that dance is also really good
Yeah.
for changing the state. Yeah. Embodiment, movement. That's why yoga is really impactful too. It's not only bringing your awareness to your body, bringing your awareness to your breath, but it completely calms your system so that you can go into that state.
Yeah. And then when speaking of yoga, in some of the old sutras, I think it might be one of the first one. I can't remember the name of it, but there were the psychic abilities were already mentioned there. And the tricky part of it is if you want to develop them, you're not going to develop them because you wanting it, it's your ego wanting something, achieve something.
Uh-huh.
But to actually get them, you need to do the opposite, which is to basically shut down the ego, right?
Yeah. I love that you said that. I was just having a conversation with somebody in our Facebook group, and he was asking how to develop his visualization because he said that when he closes his eyes, he can't see anything. And I suggested just starting with colors. He says, I can't even see colors. And I said, well, isn't it possible that maybe spirit is calling you not to see with your eyes, but actually feel with your body? You're pushing for this visualization, but maybe it's asking for embodiment. And I haven't popped back in to see what his response is, but I think that's so often the case is that we're trying to make something happen. Let me go and like develop my psychic skills to do X, Y, and Z, but we're coming at it from a very aggressive place of achieving and not that kind of laid back approach of perceiving whatever it is that the universe has for us. And when I'm doing any sort of psychic work, spiritual development, manifestation, or anything like that, I love to put myself in this place of this or something better. This is my intention. This is what I would like to see happen, but I'm also open to something else because I trust that the universe is always going to give me whatever is best for me, which may not be the vision that I had for myself.
Yeah, and we can't blame people for approaching this stuff by taking the mindset they have in normal waking life, because
Yeah.
that's all they know, really, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
So
we're in this very go,
yeah,
go, go
yeah,
society where you have to like make stuff happen and hard
yeah.
work and effort and struggle. Yeah, for
I'm doing
sure.
stuff to achieve some kind of end goal, but with meditation, spirituality, it's quite the opposite. There
Mhm.
is no end goal, even enlightenment. It's not something. It's not like an attainment at the end of a long journey or something. It's already there. All you need to do is chisel away on all the stuff that's not necessary.
Yeah.
And
It's a
it,
remembrance. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a returning back to who we are at a soul level.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I want to say something, but never mind. Might come back to me later. You mentioned these Akashic records. This sometimes it pops up, but I never really got to look into it, what it actually is. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a very fun question. I get that one a lot because not everyone does that. So, the Akashic records are the history of everything that ever was, is, and will be. And when I go into this, it looks like to me this giant library in the sky. If you can imagine, like an old school library with bookshelves from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, just completely covered with books. And this is like all the records of everyone that ever was, is, and will be. And in that library, there is the Book of Elvis, there is the Book of Nicole, there is the Book of so and this and that. And so everyone has their own like records. And each book has the record of all of your past lives, all of your in between lives, everything in your current life, and all your future lives. And so, what I do when I go into this place, I often will start in with some sort of meditative practice. We'll do just like a quick little demonstration here. So what I do is I usually ground my energies into the deep earth, making sure that I'm bringing awareness to my breath and just clearing out my system and calming my nervous system. And then I connect into the sky above by visualizing I have branches growing out. So I'm connected into the earth with my roots, connected into the sky with my branches. And then I imagine that I'm going up or floating up or going up the staircase into this cosmic library in the sky. And again, it's this beautiful like library in the clouds, lots of light, lots of books. And when I go in, I will check in with my book. I invite the book to come to me. It just kind of floats over to me. And I hold the book in my hands and I go through the book. And for whatever reason, your book wants to come to my hand. So I hope that's okay. We'll just do a little mini read on your book. And so
Go for
your
it.
book of Elvis comes in and it shows me all the like kind of like if you can imagine a movie preview, but on like fast forward. So it's like really, really fast, like all these different past lives. And then some of the in between lives. But the main theme that's coming through for yours is it's showing me a lot of like military type of like wars and battles that you were often in leadership roles, or you felt like you should have been in leadership roles where your voice wasn't necessarily listened to because you would do things outside of the box. And so anytime that you had an opportunity to be in leadership, you would do things very, very differently with incredible results, and you would actually save lives instead of hurting more lives. And so there's this interesting dynamic between struggle and battle and violence with wanting to like save the world and save more people and save more of the soldiers. And I see that now happening in your life today, which is there has been some hardship in your life getting to this point, but you're also taking all that battle, that struggle, that hardship, and then using that to then save other people. So you're fighting this battle, but not with like swords and knives and guns like you have historically in your past lives, but you're doing it with words written and spoken. And so it's just providing you encouragement that you are still on that path, that you're on the right path for you. And I say right with quotations because there is no right and wrong. There's only what's true for you. And so there's just a lot of support there. Like it's almost impossible for me to do Akashic readings without like the spirit teams coming in. But basically you have like a whole galactic team that's backing you up, like an army that's backing you up as you're doing the spiritual work and as you're sharing it with the world.
Mhm.
And then that's the practice. That's the practice. And then I always thank the book. So thank you for your time and your energy, and then allowing the book to go back to its place, and then removing myself from the library.
Well, that was
How was that?
interesting.
Does that ring true for you at all? Have you had any other past life readings, regressions, or Akashic Records readings, or anything like that?
No, no, nothing past to do with past lives. But it's interesting because I used to do martial arts before I got into calisthenics. So there was this interest. And just for the record, I like before we started recording this podcast, we didn't tell much about each other. And when it comes to like the information that's available about me on the internet, there's
I
not
have
much
not read
personal stuff.
anything about you except the post you shared for wanting a guest. That's it.
Mhm. Okay, that's good. So hold on. So there's this martial arts. Now I do tend to think outside of the box and trying to improve things and using my creativity because I'm quite a creative person. And when there's like my previous job, for example, there was nothing creative about it, so I could just get bored and just 2 days ago my employment finished. So
Congrats. Yeah.
yeah, so things that don't involve creativity, when I can improve something, I'm not interested. Now, getting my voice heard, that was a bit of a struggle throughout my entire life. That's why I'm a bit more quiet as a person, and I know that my speaking skills are not the best. I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying doing my best, I'm much better at writing stuff down. What was that? Was that you mentioned?
That you have had past lives as either in like armies or in
Mhm.
leadership in armies, and that you also have an army, like a galactic, that they look like, because I can see them, they're like around you, like tall soldiers, like with armor and like spears, and they're rather tall, like 7, 8 feet, bigger than human size, but they're there to support you as you continue what's essentially a spiritual battle here on this physical 3D plane.
Right, and you mentioned also having these struggles and using what I've learned from it to help others and help the world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like when
Yeah.
it showed me just glimpses, and again, like I don't know anything about you really, other than what you shared in your inquiry. A lot of like money struggles, like poverty type struggles, and like tension with parental figures, and like emotional like pain, like you were taking on the pain of other people and internalizing it. And what it was showing me is you are transmuting that and turning that into something else, basically turning the pain into purpose so that you can help other people and help save other people. Like you're essentially like here to save, here to help other people.
Okay, now this was super spot on. Because like, well, I grew up in Slovakia. Okay, so I was born just like a month before communism fell. So growing up in a post-communistic country, it's not the best. Even in my 20s when I was living there, the most I've earned in that country in a month was around 400 euros. So roughly $400 or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was as little as 60, just getting something from the government. So it sucked. And on top of it, my parents, they always had struggles with money. Yeah, my dad, he ended up accumulating like loads of debt. So he lost a few, 3 flats to his debts. Yeah, so that sucked. And even when I moved to the UK from Slovakia, I still struggled with money. Even when I came to Sweden, like the first few months, it was a struggle because I didn't realize how much the stuff that I grew up with over there just affected me. So even I had some good moments in the UK where I earned some money and I did some stuff. I got my personal training and certificate over there and stuff like that. But I still couldn't just get things running. And just over here, when shit hit the fan, when my girlfriend left me and I had no money, and I could have been deported actually from Sweden because you can stay as a EU citizen for like 6 months in Sweden to search for a job. I was here for hold on, this was 7 months, 8, 9 until I got my social security number. So but the thing was, you mentioned manifestation. That helped me a lot. So I was like, I'm gonna get this job, which I did. And everything worked out for me at the end. So yeah, like you were saying, I went through some struggles. Even like when I was in the UK, I the first few months I was struggling a lot because I had nobody there, and I wasn't spiritually and in terms of my own personal development as far as I thought I was. So I ended up putting on a lot of weight. Like for my standard, it was like a lot. And I was on the verge of like of eating disorder and depression. But I managed to overcome all of that. So then later on, I did like 2,000 pull-ups in 6.5 hours and stuff like that. So I took that everything that I've learned from it. And now I'm putting into my personal training. And now, as I'm about to move countries again, I started Terra Vitality, which I mentioned at the beginning, through which I want to help as many people as possible. That's why I'm supporting Project Child Safe. Like I mentioned, look at the description below. You can donate there. And Now I want to build a really good community with my business, whether it's people who want certain services, but also connect with other professionals. People like you who have something really good to offer to the world. So yeah, like you were saying, struggled a lot in the past. Now I'm taking it and making use of it so I can help others.
Yeah, so good. I love that. Ah, what a beautiful transformation. And like
Yeah,
a hero's journey, right? That's like the word that's coming through is you're a hero, a hero to other people, an inspiration to other people.
maybe I don't know. We'll see how things go. um, yeah. So yeah, you were spot on, and this is not the first time that something like that happened for my guests. I haven't mentioned this on a previous podcast yet, but I had some. I told you just a few minutes ago. I had a few seances with a medium over here in Sweden, including like a one-on-one, and I must say it's always spot on. But it's stuff you just told me, or my medium told me. Like for example, last time I saw her, I did this one-on-one session with her. I just sat down in her kitchen, and I didn't. We don't know each other. Okay, so she doesn't know much about me apart from the small conversation that we had during the seances and the stuff that she saw that turned out to be true about me. So I sat down in front of her, and the first thing she tells me before I even said anything about what's going on, she's like, "You're gonna move soon, aren't you?" Or, something along those lines. I was like, then she told me that I'm gonna be gone from Sweden. I'm gonna travel very far, and I'm gonna be gone before the end of summer. And I said to her on that session, I was like, it's like end of August, isn't it? Because over here in Sweden, it's a very short summer. So like end of August, that's when it's the end of good weather. Although there's not much good weather these days, but yeah. So like end of August, and she's like, yeah. Well, I've got my flight to San Diego booked for August 23rd. And there were other things that she told me that like totally spot on.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none of you had any way of finding this stuff out.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Gives me chills. Like I know I do this professionally, but I still it still gives me chills.
And she was getting chills as well on the
Oh,
personal session that I had with her. She was telling me like, look, I've got goosebumps, and she had it
uh-huh.
for the entire session.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. See, it's like, and then it's like you see stuff like that happen. How do people not believe that this stuff exists? Like, you can't make that up. You can't make that stuff up.
Well, I think I had this idea to some extent. I think it comes down to all this manifestation stuff in that you you affect the reality you live in. So if
Mhm.
someone doesn't believe in this kind of stuff, they're not gonna see any evidence to show
That's true.
otherwise.
That's true. Yeah.
And that might be the case.
Yeah. Your brain is going to find evidence for whatever you're telling it is to be true. That's why if you have the negative thoughts, it's going to show
Mm.
you more negative stuff, and if you have the positive thoughts, it's going to show you more of the positive stuff. Is because it's going to want to prove you right, essentially.
Yeah. Now, in my case, it's not like I'm a believer and I believe anything that I hear, right? I do come from a atheistic background, where my parents, they weren't religious or anything. Two of my grandpas were in the Communist Party in the town where I lived, so, not much religion there or anything. My dad was actually more into like Aethon than he can ancient alien stuff. So that's more my background. But I do tend to look at things critically, and okay, even like now as you were saying that stuff, I didn't even know or anything. I was just listening, let you speak. Same with the seance they had, not giving any information to see whether the information you're going to come up with is actually something that you really had no way of knowing. Because if that's the case, then that's proof that you are getting information from some kind of different source, not just from picking up on my, I don't know, body language or reading it somewhere,
Yeah.
some of that kind of stuff. So I do look at things critically, and the reason why I do podcasts about these is because all the evidence that I've seen so far, it shows that there's something to this stuff.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's just creating those safe spaces where you can even have these kinds of conversations, because there's a lot of circles that still exist today where you can't.
Yeah,
And I mean, 200 years ago, like people like us would have been like not only the weirdos, but ostracized from society and possibly even tortured and killed. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom there. And I think it's really just about creating awareness and creating that safe space for people to talk about these things so that they can learn and that they can grow.
yeah. And now that you've mentioned how it was in the past, I've heard Dino Aiden, which for anyone interested in this kind of stuff, check him out. He's an actual scientist who did some really good research in this field and published some books. He was talking about how it is actually in our genes for us to have these kinds of abilities, but it's even just like a strong intuition or something, even from like a evolutionary standpoint. It gives us an edge. Helps us to survive. If you can see something that you can't perceive just with your senses, that's a really good thing to have. Now the problem is that he mentioned is that in the descendants of people from Europe, so that will include also lots of people in Northern America. He mentioned there's something in the genes, that enables these kinds of abilities, but people of European descent have less. There's less people who have those genes, and he was saying like, okay, what happened in the Dark Ages in Europe? People like us who had some kind of abilities or experiences, they were targeted and killed.
Yep.
So people in the West have not. There's more people who don't have these kinds of, or at least can't access them as easily. Let's just say, because he also said that people who can't access these abilities, they are the exception to the rule, not the other way around.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Because I always felt that everyone is psychic, but that over time and through social conditioning, we actually, like I had
Yeah,
put it under many, many layers. And then that's just in this life. But then when you take that, our cells carry memory. And so if there's any history of violence or persecution against these abilities within your lineage, say if you have a history of healers or psychics or witches in your bloodline, there's like this very like primordial fear of embracing our power, because there's this like it's a protective mechanism that we feel that we're going to be persecuted for developing our gifts. So I love that you shared that. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot out there that we are at least not being taught.
Well, maybe being taught in these circles, that's why it's so important to share.
Yeah, we do live in a really great time these
Yeah.
days. We don't have to rely on mainstream media or anything like that to get like 5 minutes on some kind of show where everything's going to get taken out of context. We can have proper conversations like these and really share our experiences and everything. And these kinds of experiences, they've been around forever with the human race. You look at however far back, it's always been there. So who are we to deny there's literally nothing to it?
So good.
Right. Speaking of manifestation, what kind of results did you get from it, and how did it help you?
Ooh, so good. Okay. I have used manifestation a few different ways. I used a combination of quantum energy healing and manifestation to clear some illness that I had in my body so that I could have kids. So I, by setting that intention and using the power of quantum energy healing and manifestation, was able to got pregnant with my daughter within 1 to 2 months of trying, after they had told me that I was going to have a hard time having kids. So that was one of the ways that worked out for me. And then I also like to take intention setting and manifestation and layer it with the power of the moon cycle. So in the new moon, I will set an intention and then allow that tension to come through in my day-to-day life through inspired ideas and aligned actions. And then at the full moon, which we just had a full moon yesterday, at the full moon, releasing any slow-moving energy, any negative thoughts or behaviors that are maybe holding me back through manifesting that. And what's really funny, this is one of my favorite stories of manifestation outside of my daughter, of course, but my husband and I had done a full moon ritual like this, where you will write out the intentions that you want to, or not the intentions, the negative thought patterns and cycles and behaviors that you want to let go of. And you actually burn that. And then you write down and declare and affirm all of the positive thoughts that you want to bring into your life. So if you had a negative thought, say, I'm broke, that's a common one I get, like people in my community say that all the time, I'm broke. You would affirm, I'm rich, or I'm wealthy, or I'm powerful, or whatever. You would flip the script and affirm the opposite. And so we had done some shifting around this, and we had it in our heads a number, which was $2,500 US dollars. And we're like, let's call in an extra $2,500 this week, which at the time was kind of crazy. Like that was kind of an insane number for us at the time. And the next day we got a letter in the mail saying that we had overpaid on our mortgage escrow by $2,500, and they were sending us a check for $2,500 and to expect it in the mail later that week.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So it happens. It works.
It does.
Yeah.
Like even from my experience, like I was saying, when I moved to Sweden, like my ex, for example, was telling me like, you should play it safe and just go back to the UK for a bit and maybe try again later once you have a bit more money saved. I was like, hell no, I'm definitely not going back to the UK. I was like, I'm gonna make it work over here. And so I had, I've told you about the background that I come from, and I had a block, when it came to like, because you need to give to receive and not the way around. So there was a bit of an issue there in terms of giving. So I kind of like changed my mindset about it. So I was like willing to give my time and effort into something so I can, just get a normal wage to get through and sort out everything that I needed to. And I even like imagine myself driving to the gigafactory where I was working. And yeah, it happened. And even now, this is quite interesting. Something I didn't think that would be the case, because like over here, when you come to Sweden, you can take. I was told to get the social security number, the person number as they call it over here, would take up to 6 months to get it. Right. Once I had the contract with my job, I went to sort it, and I got my social security number in a week. Yeah.
You're a time bender. You can bend time. That's amazing.
So yeah, it's like once you align yourself with what you want to achieve, things work out at the end.
Yeah, that's true. So good. I love that a lot. I did something like that with bending time. I had my dog, since we had moved here to Houston, Texas. The climate here is very hot and humid, and it affected the chemistry of her skin, and she started getting itchy and scratching and losing her hair, and she looked a hot mess. She looked terrible. And I took her into the doctor, the vet, and he said it's going to take 6 to 12 months for this to resolve. I thought, no, I'm not about that. So I did some like power of manifestation. I did some quantum energy healing on her. I came back 4 weeks later. She looked amazing. And he goes, is this the same dog? I said, yeah. He goes, oh my gosh, I have never seen anything like this. I wish I had taken a before and after photo, because this does not look like the same dog. It's a completely different dog. And like, keep doing whatever you're doing because it's working. And yeah, you can bend time for sure.
That's interesting. Now you mentioned quantum healing quite a bit. I think it's something I've heard about as well, but never looked into it properly. What is it?
So, quantum healing is being able to read or feel the energy that's happening within you or in another living being. So, myself, my dog, a plant. Um, and what I can do as a psychic, I have three primary clairs. So, we have clairvoyance, claircognizance, and clairsentience. There are also other clairs that tune into the different senses. So, you can have clairaudience, which is clear hearing, clairolfactance, which is clear smelling, and clairgustance, which is clear tasting. So I tend to see, which is clairvoyance, know, which is the clair cognizance, and then the feeling, which is the clairsentience. So when I tune into someone's field, I can go in and then I can start to energetically shift energy. Oftentimes I do it with my hands. So I do something called light language, which is channeled from, it's thought to be the language of the angels. And so I can start going in and energetically shifting. So when you were talking about your money, like your money story of how like you had grown up in a post-communist country and then your parents had money issues, and I could actually see around you, it's like a grid, kind of like a computer. Like if you were to open up a computer and there's all these little buttons and cords and cables and stuff, I could
Mhm.
see it around you and behind you. And I should have just done it, but I really wanted to like go in and start like pulling the levers and like energetically shifting it. And I can like go in and change it. And I can do it for someone's money story. I can do it for someone's
I mean, you go for it. I don't
physical
mind.
physical physical condition. And what someone had done for me in that second spiritual awakening is she had gone into my back and done light language on my back and like recoded and rekeyed essentially my hardware operating system so that I would open up towards psychic development and spiritual growth. And so if we were to go into you like your money story, essentially it's like all the little switches towards wealth and prosperity are flicked off, and all the coding that's says like you have to work hard, you have to struggle, you have to earn it, like life is tough, life is hard, like nothing ever works out, like all that's switched on. So we would just go in and like energetically turn that off, like flipping the switches down and then opening up and activating the dial for wealth, prosperity, and abundance. And then in there, there's like this belief factor that as I'm talking, like there's some little part of you kind of here in the gut that's like, I don't know if that's really true or that's really possible, that or I can really like completely change my money story or make millions of dollars. So we're just going to turn that off, energetically release that. A lot of that is coming through as your ancestry, right? So if you think about not only your past lives, which now, as we know from the Akashic Records reading, is that there's a lot of battle and struggle in those situations. So there's this part of you that believes like life is tough, life has to be hard, like everything's a struggle, right? So just energetically rewriting that story and clearing that out. And then going into your ancestry, like if you look at where you grew up and then like where they grew up and your parents and then where their parents grew up, like this whole record of life is hard, life is a struggle, if we go in and energetically clear that. And again, like I can see it in my head, but for those that can't see it, it looks like the money story was cords and levers and dials and buttons and knobs. And then the ancestry looks like, if you were to look at like a tapestry, it's like woven in this idea that life is hard. So what I go in is I look at this tapestry and I pull out the threads that say that life is hard, life is a struggle, and I pull that out, and then we clear that line, which is with your money line, which looks like essentially like a pipe. If you could imagine like an aquifer pipe coming into your life, and this is where money either flows or it doesn't. Like right now it's shut off, it's clogged. So clearing out the clog and then opening up the floodgates and allowing money to come through. And then again, washing away any sort of doubt or resistance you have towards receiving money. Also, it's also connected to your heart. So the more that you are open to receiving love, giving your time, giving your energy, the more that you are open to receiving love, receiving time, receiving energy, and realizing that money is just energy. And so as you open up to this, more of that money comes through as well.
Hmm. Interesting. The last thing that you just said. because when I was in the UK, especially at the end, it was like during the lockdowns and everything, and that was one of the main reasons why I left the UK, because I didn't want to be told, you can't go out, can't see your friends, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Over here in Sweden, and I was just all you can do whatever you want, pretty much.
Mm.
Right. But back then, basically, I had my girlfriend, good relationship with her sister, one good friend, a few other, but I haven't been in touch with them like all the time. I was kind of closed off. Then all the stuff that happened over here happened, and I realized that if I want to achieve everything I want to, because I always had big goals in life and curiosity and drive and everything to achieve great things, I was like, okay, if I really want to achieve what I want, I need to open myself up more. That's how this podcast started, actually.
Yeah.
And the moment I opened myself up and started connecting with people, especially through the podcast, also outside of it, making friends, things started working out for me. I got this job, which was the best paid job I had uh, at that time. And yeah.
Amazing. Can I show you a little exercise that'll
Yeah,
help
of
you
course.
like let go and release and receive more?
Hmm.
So often in life, and we touched on this earlier, that we feel like we have to like struggle or strive or achieve or earn and work hard. It's this kind of energy. If you would just like close your fists and just notice how that feels. And it's very tense. Like your whole
Hmm.
body tenses up when you do this. And this is actually counterproductive to receiving, because if I were to show up at your door and say, Elvis, here's everything you've ever wanted and more, how could you possibly receive if your hands are all clenched like this?
Makes
You
sense.
can't. It's not possible. So I always shake that off because that's a very tense energy. And so then just notice how it feels to open up with your hands wide open. And it's this very humble gesture of surrender. I don't love the word submission, so we're going to use the word surrender. But surrendering to the universe and trusting and allowing the universe to guide you and to bless you. Because now, if and when the universe comes to you and says, "Here, Elvis, here's everything you ever wanted and more," I can actually feel it as an empath. I can feel it in my hands. Everything it's wanting to give you. It's just there. All you have to do is just open your hands and just take it.
Hmm.
And so, like, whenever you feel in that energy of, oh, I have to do this to get that, that's this. I just did it subconsciously. I just clenched my fist, let go, and lean back and receive. I also use the illustration of so much in our lives, we are swimming against the current, trying to force things, trying to push things, trying to make things happen. And it's like if you were swimming against the current going upstream versus if you let go, if you lean back, again, opening arms wide open and just allow that river, that life to take you where it wants to go, it's never going to like throw you off a waterfall, right? But it's going to be much easier for you to lean into things, for you to follow your intuition, for you to follow the nudges and lean into the manifestations than it is for you to try and like work hard and struggle and force things to happen by swimming upstream.
Hmm. It makes sense. It's like, again, it comes down to the mindset of the modern Western person of achieving things from a place of the ego. I need to achieve
Yeah.
things and control everything, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to just going with the flow, right? And just
Mm-hmm.
open up yourself to whatever comes. Now,
Yeah.
there's obviously a balance. Sometimes you need to act when it is
Yeah.
necessary to act. It also reminded me of this part from Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, where he said, "A wise man does not do anything, but nothing is left undone."
I love that. That's so
And
beautiful.
even in manifestation, they also say that you need to open yourself up to all the possibilities of how what it is that you want can actually come to you, because they can come to you in many different ways. And like you were saying with the $2,500, like if you are holding on to a notion that it has to come to me in this way, and this is the only way it can come to me, it probably wouldn't, and you end
Yeah,
up coming to you in a way that you just didn't expect to.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So true.
Yeah, and when it comes to quantum healing, one last question about it, because I can. heard a lot of scientists had a bit of a gripe with people like us using the word quantum and referring to quantum physics. So why is that word there?
To me, the word quantum represents a big leap. So essentially, we would take, say, I get this a lot in my field, a woman who has reproductive issues that maybe wants to have children. Like that was the case with me. I healed myself using this, and I've helped other women do the same. We take what could essentially be a several year long fertility journey, and we just fast track, fast forward, and just shift timelines using what would, traditionally in Western medicine take maybe 2, 3, even 5 years or more. I've seen people that have had 7 year long fertility journeys. And we, rather than going that approach through Western medicine, use light language, use Reiki, use shifting of energy to condense that timeline. So when I say quantum energy healing, we are taking what could have been several years and essentially doing a quantum leap or a big leap from point A to Z rather than A to B to C to D. You see, it's what we talked about earlier about bending time is you're collapsing the timeline to create really fast results.
Hmm. So in a way, it's kind of like a metaphor, right? But yeah, because like in when it comes to quantum physics, like on the subatomic level, the way the universe works, it's so counterintuitive. It's nothing like the world we can see and touch as we are right now. Because particles can take the energy from their future self to pass a impenetrable barrier. They communicate through long distances with zero time. So basically, the information goes infinitely fast from whom, which shouldn't be possible, but it does happen. So in a way, I guess it's kind of a metaphor, but at the same time, when it comes to these psychic abilities, right? So emotive viewing or whatever else is out there, it has been shown that these are not work. So some people call it like a sixth sense, but it's not really because it doesn't work the same way as all the other senses do. Like our vision obviously works with with the magnetic spectrum, but there was some, for example, I've heard about some studies where they put people into a Faraday cage and see if there's going to be some kind of a telepathy going on, something like that, which it did. But if it was if it was based on electromagnetism, it shouldn't have been the case because if you put something into a Faraday cage, there's no radio waves, no anything going in and out. So it does seem like, especially if people like, even if you look at the research that CIA did with remote viewing and Ingo Swann and all these other people that were doing the research, where they can see things that are so far away from them, or even not just in space, but also in time. Because there was one case where they were looking at there was a target that was supposed to remotely view, and they got I'm not sure who it was doing. It was within this secret CIA project. So they got a lot of things right, but they mentioned that there were like two or three large collectors of water, or something that held a lot of water in there, but it wasn't anything like that. Later on, they saw some pictures from the 1930s of the same place, and there were these big tanks there. And even Ingo Swann, speaking of the distance, when he was remote viewing Jupiter, he actually mentioned, amongst other things, the rings of Jupiter. But this was like in the 60s, before Pioneer and Voyager went to visit Jupiter. So at that point, had no way of knowing that Jupiter does have actually some rings around, even though they're not as prominent as those of Saturn. But he got it right,
That's
despite this
amazing.
huge distance.
Yeah, I love playing around with telepathy, remote viewing, astral projection. We get into those topics later on. I have a academy where people can come and study psychic phenomenon and
Mhm.
and do all that. And I trained them how to do that. And we were playing around with telepathy with my husband, and I play this all the time. And you can actually develop this with anyone you're essentially in a vortex with, a close relationship with, especially if you live in the same home, because you have like the same energy frequency. And so I have something called sleep paralysis, where essentially my soul travels when I'm sleeping, and it takes a few minutes for it to come back to my body when I wake up. So I'm laying there paralyzed when I wake up in the morning. And I'm thinking in my head, because my husband's already gotten out of bed, I'm thinking, make potatoes for breakfast, make potatoes for breakfast. And I'm sending him this telepathic message, and he pops in like a minute later and he goes, "Hey, I just had this feeling you wanted me to make potatoes for breakfast. So I've already started."
Cool.
Thank you. Or he'll be out shopping, and I'll think, okay, pick up some sushi while you're at the grocery store. Get me some sushi while you're at the grocery store. And then he'll call me and be like, "Hey, I just grabbed some sushi, so don't eat anything for lunch. Thank you." And we'll do it with my daughter too. So my daughter is almost 3, my son is 10 months. And I, as this little baby's mother, of course, knows what he needs, not just because I'm his mommy, but also like he and I have a telepathic connection. And so I'll know, okay, he needs a diaper change, or he needs to eat, or he needs to take a nap, or whatever. But I'll test my daughter, and I'll ask her, okay, like, what does the baby need? And she'll say, oh, he needs a diaper change, or he needs food, or he needs to take a nap. And she'll be right. And she has no other way of knowing other than
Mhm.
having a telepathic connection or being psychic. Yeah.
It's cool. So, how do you develop a telepathic connection like this? How do you start?
Yeah, I would start with, let me see if I have them here on my desk. There are these little things called Zener cards that you can pick up online. And you don't have to buy these. You can also make these, or you can use tarot cards. You just need anything that has a unique set of symbols.
Mhm.
And so these are Zener cards for anyone that wants to know. There's a star, a square, a circle, wavy lines, and a plus sign. And ideally, it's best if you have a partner, if you want to practice the telepathy. So what you do is you have a partner pick a card or visualize a card, and then they would focus on, say, the plus sign. And so they don't show you the card, but they're looking at the card, they're visualizing the plus sign, and then they're telepathically visualizing, sending you that plus sign. And then you, as the receiver, would then feel into the energy of the shape and just notice what like type of shape is coming through, and don't necessarily pick the first thing that pops into your head, but really feel into the energy of the shape and then guess the plus sign. Now you do have if there's 5 cards, 20% chance of getting it right. But this is an exercise you can play around with. Or if you don't have a partner, what you do is you lay the cards down and shuffle the cards, and then like feel into the energy of what card. Like if I were going to pick this, I was right. I would guess the star. I should have said it before I picked it, but. So you would feel into the energy that you're going to pick the card, and then draw the card to see if you're right.
Mhm.
Is one way to play around with it.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Now, when you said the statistics, like they have like a 1 in 5 chance of picking up. Now, in some studies, I've heard that there was studies where some people were consciously focusing on an experiment, like the double slit experiment or random number generators. They would focus on it, and statistically, there was a higher chance of getting the results they were focusing on. And it was even so significant. There was even more than when they found the Higgs boson, for which the people got a Nobel Prize. So it was even, at least, or if not even more significant than that.
Wow.
Now, when you were talking about the Akashic records, the way you described it, it reminded me of something that I've heard before. It was this guy I was listening to. He passed away, but he's a really interesting guy. Killing the E. He was a martial artist, and amongst other things, he would take extremely high doses of psilocybin mushrooms. like, like think of me talking about like what's it called? Psilocybin cubensis mushrooms. It's like the gold standard of these mushrooms. 5 joy grams, as Ted McCann would say, would be like his heroic dose, which would, dissolve your ego and everything. He would take upwards of 20 grams, this guy. So,
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
yeah. I don't recommend anyone taking something like that. I mean, it's a lot, but it's still compared to the dose you would have to take to actually die from it. It's still like a tiny fraction. So just shows how safe it is. But psychologically, it's going to be way more difficult. Well, he was saying that because basically psilocybin and DMT are very close. It's basically just one OH group in psilocybin, which makes it orally active, whereas DMT is not. And he was saying that DMT is basically like a record of information. And he was basically saying that these psilocybin mushrooms, they basically travel from planet to planet, whether it's on their own as spores or someone takes them from planet to planet. And by ingesting them, you connect to this vast network of information that's out there, and DMT kind of provides this access to it. So, for there was like a interesting correlation there.
Yeah, I believe that. That makes a lot of sense. Because I had connected in with the different starseed families. So the star seeds are these different galactic origins, and it's essentially like, if you want to look at them like alien races. And I had done that before in my psychic channeling and meditations, and in working on other people. Their spirit teams will come in, and their galactic families will come in and connect in. I think yours might be Pleiadian. That was the word that was coming through if you want to look into the Pleiadians. So I had done this before on my own, and through meditation and through psychic channeling. And then I had my first psychedelic experience with psilocybin mushrooms. And in this essentially trance, I was just called to close my eyes. And it was like watching a movie. And each of the different starseed families came in and essentially invited me into their world and showed me like all of the wisdom that they were wanting to bring into the world. And each starseed origin has like a different flavor or different type of wisdom or a different type of technology that they were wanting to share. And so each of them showed me, and there was like over a dozen, like maybe 18 different starseed systems that showed me different modalities and different healings. But that makes sense what you were saying about like, if this is transferred from planet to planet or place to place, like it's actually a way to tap into and access those different wisdom centers instantly.
Yeah, even Terence McKenna was saying stuff like that the psilocybin mushroom, or whatever is behind it, is actually an intelligence that has seen millions of worlds and traveled the galaxy, which is,
Yeah.
it sounds really out there, but it's at least very interesting to think about. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what's out there.
Yeah,
Like
it's
even if you
true.
look at life on Earth, there's so much variety in just what we have on one planet. Now, how was your first psychedelic experience then?
It was really intense. And I only took 2.5 grams, which is like a weenie dose, very lightweight. I tend to be very sensitive to substances, and so for me, it took what I had already been experiencing in my psychic world, in my quantum energy healing practice, and enhanced it. And I felt like when we talk about there being no separation between us and the divine, it was if as if my physical body had melted, and all of my blood and cells and everything was just one with the universe, and the universe was one with me. And the the visions that I was seeing, it was like really fast, really, really fast. So like to see this many sequences and hundreds and thousands of years of history, like it showed me the whole history of the earth, and like how different things that different past lives that I had had, and different ancestral stuff that had been happening. And there was a lot of emotions coming through, because as an empath I could feel the emotions. And I would have this like internal dialogue with the spirits that were revealing things to me, of like, yes, I'm ready for more, show me more. And they're telling me, no, you're not ready. And I'm like, yes, tell me. So they showed me this whole history of like people being persecuted and tortured and murdered for being their like authentic selves, for manifesting, for practicing magic, for being psychic, for being healers. And I just was bawling. So I'm there with my eyes on the couch, my eyes closed, and I'm bawling. And my husband's like, I can hear my husband talking to me, like, are you okay? What's going on? And I can't talk back because I'm just watching this movie of everything that's happening and I'm processing the energy. And then we get through the history of the earth, we get through my personal history and my like past lives and all those things, and then it shows me all the galactic wisdom of the different starseed systems, and they each come to me, and it was like their ambassador would come to me. They would take me to their place in the sky, and they would show me their how they live, and they would show me all the wisdom and galactic technologies, and that lasted. I didn't time it, but I feel like it was just based on what the clock had said. I think it was like a couple hours of that. And again, like very, very intense. And then it started to come and go. It started wearing off. So I would be lucid for a while and like be able to go to the bathroom, but then it would wear off and I'd start having some other vision, and then I'd be lucid again, and then I'd have some other vision, and then eventually, it was done and it had run its course. But it was really fascinating. It was fascinating to me.
Yeah. I mean, this is some of the weirdest stuff I personally can experience, but it's so valuable if you do it the right way. And it was interesting, you said that it was like very fast. Because I've followed by it before, and whether it's psilocybin or LSD, it's I noticed before it's like, so right now in this reality that we are perceiving it, it's kind of slow, kind of heavier density or frequency or what we may call it. But when you're on it, it's just like so fast. There's so much in there. Which
Yeah.
if you look at what the brain does when you're tripping. Now, our senses and everything that we perceive from the world, there's a lot more information coming in that we are consciously aware of. Our brain filters out like the vast majority of the
Yeah.
information. But when you take these psychedelics, like the berry is gone. So you get it all, and it can be very overwhelming. On top of it, some parts of the brain which don't usually connect, they do. The part of your brain that's responsible for the ego and like this self-centered activity gets shut down, and having this experience where the ego just dissolves, dies away, and you're like connected with everything and everything that ever was, there will be of other beings and human beings or otherwise with the earth. It's so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense. We had music playing in the background, and at one point the music was actually setting the cadence for what I was seeing, and then like I could see the music, if that makes sense. Like the music had a color and a texture, and it was part of the visuals that I was seeing. And I should have locked the dogs up, but the dogs were outside, and so they were barking, and every time they would bark, that would like create a wave in the visuals
Mhm.
that I was seeing, and that like they actually like their spirits came into the visions I was seeing, and everything was connected. And Raleigh, my husband, was asking me to like open my eyes, and I kept saying my eyes are already open, but even though my eyes were closed, I could still see what he was doing and what was going on and where he was in the room.
Well, the third eye
Even
was definitely open. the,
what's that?
the third eye was definitely open.
Right? Like I could still, even though my physical eyes were closed, I could see through my third eye what was happening in the physical space, but also in the mental space that I was in, the astral space.
Yeah, these are crazy experiences, but like I said, there's a lot we can learn from it. Like even if you look at the research when it comes to overcoming addiction, depression,
Yeah.
as Paul Stamets says, I said the results seem just too good.
And it also
Uh,
makes me wonder, like, why is something that could be so beneficial hidden or like ostracized or be illegal? Is I feel like the powers that be don't want for us to have access to these technologies, because that would mean that we have power and independence and we're not reliant on the systems and structures in order to exist, in order to live.
Well, there's a few reasons for it. First of all, people being stuck in this kind of materialistic mindset where they say only this kind of state of consciousness where you are being productive and making stuff and solving problems. That's the only legit state of consciousness apart from sleeping or whatever. Right, that's one thing. Then there's also some religious stuff that comes into it, because many religions they just don't want people to have these kinds of experiences. Because let's face it, like this experience where your ego dissolves and you are one with the universe and basically with God. I mean, that's a direct experience that you can have rather than having something related to you through something else, like through the church, through some holy book. You just go directly to the source, literally to the source,
Yeah.
right? And then when it comes to big pharma, like for them, it's not a good business model, right? If you can just grow a few mushrooms for like super cheap, because making psilocybin synthetically, it's super expensive. Like making it in a lab, it doesn't make sense. Growing it super easy, like anyone can do it in the basement or whatever, you know. And on top of it, if someone takes, like there was studies that shown that even just one or two big doses of psilocybin, they can alleviate depression like a long term talking, and even like take away the fear of dying in terminally ill patients, right? So giving someone one or two doses of something that's cheap to make, it's not patentable, it's not a good business model. Whereas with SSRIs and all the other things, wherever they are selling people, like people get hooked on it. Many times they get addicted to it. They become dependent on it, so they can't work properly without having that stuff. It comes with lots of side effects for which you probably gonna need some other medication on top
Yeah.
of it. So yeah, lots of reasons. But in some places it's getting better. Like there were some places who legalized it now. Bobby Kennedy, who's running for president, he's like, yeah, we need to legalize weed and psychedelics, put like a federal tax on it, use the money to create centers where people can heal, grow their own foods, and you know, so it's not. I think it's on a good path. And
Mm,
people like us talking about it, even Joe Rogan, and it helps.
I love that.
Yeah. So how are you integrating this experience that you had?
I think for me, it's an invitation to continue to keep that channel open. I think I'm doing a lot better about it now, but there was a season in my life where I would kind of shut off the psychic stuff and compartmentalize and like only do it for my clients and like nowhere else in my life. And I think that was a protective mechanism for me because I had so much anxiety and depression and chronic illness. I felt like I had to like guard myself and not let any other energies or entities in. But essentially, even leading up to that point, and more so now that I've had this experience, it's just leaving that channel open and just realizing that there is no separation between me and the divine, that I can tap into that energy at any time. And if any one of these galactic teams want to come in and give me guidance and wisdom to pass on to whoever I'm channeling for, whether it's for myself or a family member or for a client or a group member or a podcast, that I just really see myself as a channel, as a vessel, as an extension of that divine love, divine grace, divine light. And it's not about me. That was the other thing, is that it's not about me, that what's happening in my life and around me and through me is not about me, Nicole, the person, but about just me allowing things to move through me so that I can pursue my soul mission and my life purpose and hopefully, resolve whatever it is that I came on this earth here for, because I'm here for a reason.
Yes, I actually meant how you are integrating the psychedelic experience that you had. But I just thought I'd let you talk.
Oh no, yeah, that's what I mean, is
Yeah.
that's what it
Oh,
showed me. It
all
showed
right.
me that yes, I have access to all of that information and I can continue to keep that, because what I was feeling is that I don't have to necessarily take shrooms to connect in that
Mhm.
way, is that I can just keep my receiving channel open at all times to receive messages like that in everyday life, not just in a
Yeah.
psychedelic experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no one needs to rely on them or anything. It's just another tool that's out there,
Another
or a
tool.
super powerful one.
Yeah.
And also the integration of what you learn from it afterwards. That's probably the most important part, really.
Yeah.
Because on a spiritual journey, you do the work first, and at the end, you perhaps have this kind of experience. But this is more like the other way around. You get thrown into this experience. It's intense as hell, and then you need to integrate it into your life and
Mhm.
make use of it somehow.
Yeah.
Now, one last thing that I want to ask you, because you also mentioned like precognitive dreams and stuff like that. Do you work with dreams, or do you have something extraordinary happening there?
Yeah. For me, dreams are a way for spirit to communicate with us, because we essentially have our guard down, because that left brain logical thinking is turned off and we're completely in our subconscious and unconscious mind. And I have seen, like before I started tuning into this, the dreams were a way for me to get those visions without me questioning it so much. Because if I were to get a predictive vision in waking life, then there's that like questioning of it. Well, is this really true? Is this really happening? That's where the anxiety would kick in. Now that I'm, have resolved that anxiety piece of it and I'm much more in tune with things, I can actually make requests to the universe and say, hey, universe, like I have this question in my life, or I have this direction I'd like to go. Can you send me a sign? Or I would like to receive a message from this angel or this spirit guide, or actually, can you connect me into, say, my mother or this other person, and like have us have a conversation in the dream world? Because I also believe that the dreams, if I'm sleeping and you're sleeping, we can actually talk to each other telepathically in this dream world and then have that vision come through. And so now that I'm much more connected, I can actually make requests. And then, like I mentioned, my spirit actually travels when I'm sleeping. So I'll be off doing work in the galactic realm or wherever. And then I have to come back. And then someone that is wanting to play around with this energy too may also develop, and I had this for many years, lucid dreaming, which is the ability to actually control what's happening in the dream. So one of the ways of developing that is just bringing your awareness to the fact that you're dreaming. And if you're not sure, you can start playing around with the energy. Like light switches won't work correctly usually in a dream. And if you were to read something, say like a billboard or a letter or something written down in a
Look at the
dream,
time or something.
yeah, look away and then look back, it'll say something different.
Mhm.
Same with the time will say one thing. And then if you look away, look back,
Number of
it'll
fingers you have.
yeah, there's all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
I like to play around in my dreams with flying and teleporting and time travel. That's what I like to do in my dreams, and it's just a way of accessing information. But that's where I would start, is if you are wanting to use dreams for predictions or manifestations or spirit messages, is set an intention before you go to bed. Say, spirit, I would like to see a hummingbird, that's my spirit animal, to let me know that I'm this is the right job for me, or this is the right partner for me, or whatever. And then just start noticing what comes through. It can also help to maybe have a dream journal to keep track.
Yeah, these are super interesting. Speaking of dreams, just recently I had 3 times within like 2 weeks, me and my friend had the same dream, if not even the same night. And
Yeah.
sometimes, in one case, for example, that we had a dream of a bear, and the night before, I just sent him a meme. It was a pretty funny one. It was like a cartoon with a bear, right? So I sent it to him, and the next day, he saw it, and he was like, "Man, I actually had a dream of a bear." And I realized, hold on, I also had a dream of a bear.
Oh,
you know?
interesting.
Yeah. Then we had
Oh,
a.
you're getting me thinking. I In the past few days, I've woken up at like 5 a.m. from a dream. And then my daughter will wake up like 15 or 20 minutes later. And I wonder if she's having the same dream and that's why she's waking up. She's not supposed to wake up that early. She's
Hmm.
only 2.5, so she can't tell me what she's dreaming of. But
Right.
uh, that's interesting.
Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah.
I was also talking to him. We did a call, and because he lives in the UK, and we were talking about some other dream. And I mentioned that I had this dream that I was getting shot or something. I got shot a few times in the chest. He had the same one, you know.
Crazy.
And I had some other ones. I remember one time I had a dream where I was afraid of getting sacked at the work. I was like, what was that? I think I had that even like 2 nights in a row. And then I was at work, and my manager actually sent me a message like, "I want to talk to you." I was like, "Oh shit!" I didn't get
Oh,
sacked though, but so that's super interesting dreams.
wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Been talking for like 1.5 hours. It was super interesting. I just love talking about these kinds of things. So before we finish, what's one piece of advice you could give to people if there was just one thing you could tell them?
Ooh. To trust, what it is that you're seeing, that you're thinking, that you're feeling, and let go of what makes logical sense and to just lean into that because I believe that we already have the answers. The answers are inside of us. It's just a matter of whether or not we're listening. And the more you tune in and the more you listen and just go with it without questioning it, the easier life's going to be for you and the easier the manifestations are going to be.
What do you think is the meaning of life?
In your life to remember who we are, why we're here, that we were sent here for a reason, and this whole journey is discovering what that reason is and then taking that aligned action towards that. I don't think it's so much the learning as or doing the work as it is just remembering why we're here and who we are.
Great. And where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me online on Instagram, instagram.com/Nicole.Starbuck. That's Nicole, little dot in the middle, followed by my last name, Starbuck. And then I also have a free group online at Facebook. So facebook.com/group/Oracle Academy. Oracle spelled like Aura, Auracle Academy.
Great. I'll give you a follow on Instagram. And as
Thank
always,
you.
you guys can find all the links in the description below. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. We can do a second part at some point in the future. And thank you very much for listening. Give it a like, share if you like to, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.